Used Media presents the full audio recording of an interview on local activism. Julie Cosgrove and myself, Justin Kenward, met with Charlene McKinley-Powell in Riverside, California on April 3rd, 2018. The following is most of the interview recorded. Unfortunately, due to technical error, we lost the last 10 minutes of the interview. This recording is intended to accompany a written story published on the Used Media website. To find the full written story, go to usedmedia.org. The interview was held at Charlene's personal home. In the background, on occasion, you may hear a cat and dog being very dog and cat-like. So without further ado, I present to you Charlene on local activism.
What I'm really kind of hoping for is a picture of what an activist does here in Riverside and what Riverside activism looks like. So I'll probably want a little bit more background. I know you got here in October 2013. Immediately were recruited.
We jumped right in. Well, because Rancho Cucamonga had we looked around, there was nothing. It's a very Republican area. There was no local chapter of the Democratic Party or anything. There was no activism there, because it's just it's conservative and nothing for us.
Was David Trier the representative then, or was he at this, or was somebody else?
No,
Okay.
It was Steinhardt, maybe? No, I forget if he's...
Mark Steiner?
Whoever it is, he was certainly a Republican. Oh no, Mike with something with an M? I don't know. But we're much happier here. And I would say here, in terms of Greg and I jumped right into being with Democrats of Greater Riverside. Started out as the co-chairs of the Communications Committee. Then I was secretary for close to 2 years. The secretary dropped out, so I finished that term and then had another. And then vice president for a year, and now president. So we keep ourselves very involved. And I will say, from when we started with it to now, the activist community is growing. I mean, it's the Trump effect. We had a major Trump bounce. I mean, we went from 30-something members to a little over 100.
Whoa.
And those are the dues-paying members, not just people who show up to stuff.
Oh my goodness. People contributing and showing up.
Well, I mean, there are people who they join, they pay their $25 membership a year and never go to anything, but it's good because all the money from the membership allows us to do things like, get supplies for the sign-making events, donate to candidates, we can't host fundraisers because we're not a PAC, but we can host
special
special meetings, receptions. Where we don't handle any of the donation money, we just supply a place and some food.
I see.
Yeah, and so we've done, I know I'm working on a special reception for Penny Newman. She's running for Board of Supervisors. It would be wonderful to have a woman on there. She would also be the only Democrat.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Yes. Well, the guy who had her seat was there. He was one of the families that, I don't know if they were quite founders of Riverside, but they've been big shots for ages and ages. And so that guy decided he wasn't going to run again, so that opened up a good opportunity. We've also 2016, we hosted a special meeting for Sabrina Cervantes, who she won her race for Assemblywoman. She gave us the supermajority in California legislature.
Okay.
Which I don't think we have anymore because some folks had to drop out because naughty behavior. We lost a few.
Times change.
So I do like the fact, we already have, I think part of why there wasn't as much activism before is that we already have our Congressman, Mark Decano, Democrat, State Senator Richard Roth. Yes, that author's Philip. Richard Roth, Democrat. I mean, Jose Medina is our Assemblyman, Democrat. Our City Council, no, not so much. There's one sort of actual Democrat, another one is sort of Democrat in name only.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and it's something like 6 old white guys and 1 Latino. Again, no women and not nearly representative. They're just, our local governments are not representative of our population here. We've got to be close to half or more Latino, of course, half female. And then what do we have? A bunch of old white guys.
The old guard.
And that's why even trying to even get volunteers for Hillary, because we, as a state, we basically export volunteer time for things like that. Where presidential, we know, of course she's going to get California, so what do? I was there phone banking calling Michigan and Pennsylvania. So we actually export a lot of volunteer time. I mean, and there's even some people, I'm not so diehard, who will like hop on a bus and like go to Vegas or Utah or something and canvas there.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not that hardcore.
But you'll organize it.
I'll organize stuff. I don't know about a bus trip, but I do organize a lot of activities. I feel like every time we have a march, I've put together a sign making workshop. I think I've done at least 3, 4 of them now. Not every march, but often. Both the women's marches, March for Our Lives, and there was a rally in Upland where the neo-Nazi group was supposed to show up. They didn't show up, but it was good. It was still, we were prepared. We were there.
You were there.
That one was just Greg and I, and then I was one of the speakers, which doesn't usually happen. I'm okay with that. But the thing is, the nice thing with those, they're not technically Democrats of Greater Riverside events because we have them at the UU Church, as you were there.
Yes.
So there's a Facebook group, Inland Empire Resistance, and they are the hosts.
Okay.
I just have to be on that group too. And so those have been very popular. And what I really like with the sign making is every time I've done it, like almost no one is actually from the Democrats of Greater Riverside.
Uh-huh.
So I love the fact it's really bringing in the community, because there are a lot of people who are liberals, who are activists, but for whatever various reasons do not want to identify as Democrats. Even if, in fact, they basically are, they do not want to identify as that. And I've had people now where I've seen them second, third time now, they keep coming back to the sign making events.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
It's a nice event. I think we were at one of them. It's
Yeah.
just a pleasant evening.
It is, and we're very lucky because the UU Church, it's like church for the not so believing set. It's a super liberal. I mean, I remember talking to one of the former presidents of the church, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm not sure we actually have any Christians."
Well, they're Unitarians.
Oh, pagans and agnostics, atheists, Buddhists, whatever. And the chair of their social justice committee is super duper receptive to having the sign making things there. They don't charge us or anything, which is really nice.
That's really nice.
So every time I have something there, I do request attendees bring like a canned or dry good, because the church collects food for Arlington Temporary Assistance. So I'm like, well, if we're getting the space for free, at least we can do
donate
something,
That's easy enough for
Yes.
people to do.
Yeah, it's like, okay, grab a can of something out the door, and that's been very well received. I mean, most people show up with something.
That's
Some
great.
people bring in, like, here, brought a bag.
That's great.
So that's been really
great.
nice. I like that we have the good relationship with the church. And then in terms of the activist community, it's largely older white women. I mean, it is. I feel to a large extent it's because these people have the time. Like, I work full time, lots of other activities, social stuff, so I do as much as I can, and probably too much. But, these people, I'm glad that people who are retired, have more free time, are taking the lead in a lot of things.
That's
Like March for Our Lives, Women's March. Those were very much, well, the March for Our Lives was the students, but they had a big support team in the retired older woman community.
That was amazing. That was really amazing. I was trying to figure out how other cities did in these marches, and I don't think most of them did as well as Riverside. Maybe Santa Ana did.
Well,
But
we had over 4,000 was the estimate in
that
the
is
Press
amazing.
Enterprise.
That is amazing.
And this was surprising because they had like all the local, Victorville, San Bernardino, all the local areas had their own marches. And yet we still had a huge turnout. Probably, well, the numbers are debatable on the Women's March that was this year, but I would say the Gun March was probably bigger. And that march, though, was a general Inland Empire, not Riverside. So we had a lot of folks from San Bernardino who, frankly,
they
were more
rather than
trouble than they were worth. They just came in and caused problems. Including having a handful of them actually, like, protesting against the Women's March.
Oh, for heaven's sake!
Yeah.
I missed that. We missed that.
Luckily, they were shut down pretty quickly. They had this group from San Bernardino who were young. I mean, they were quite young, and they were at most of the planning meetings and were extremely convinced that their voices were never being heard. Yes. And it was just extremely frustrating because here these were people who not only were they coming to the meetings, they were really monopolizing a ton of time. And then they got permission to use the front yard of the UU church because they were going to do some sort of, donate clothing, come get stuff if you need it kind of thing. No, they put up a sound system and started yelling about how the march was not inclusive. And I'm like, do you see the people walking by? Like, we got people of every color, every gender identity, every sexual orientation, and they're screaming that, that it's not inclusive.
They were confusing. I do remember.
Yeah.
They seemed to have a conglomeration of different things they were trying to do. Anyway.
They did. And I think they had a sign up there, something about, like, cops kill. Like, they had something that was like, no.
We'll talk about that next time.
Yeah, like this is, so we were, I think that's part of why the grown-up organizers of March for Our Lives probably did not reach out to San Bernardino.
I see.
Because they were just extremely difficult to work with.
That's interesting.
And ultimately, everybody was very upset about, here they are, they've come to so many meetings, and we think they're there with, like, good intentions, let's help, and then all they do is they set up and protest what we're doing, despite their heavy involvement in organizing it, and then claiming they're left out. So.
There's some in every group.
There are. Luckily, we doesn't seem to have further problems with March for Our Lives, and I would think going forward we won't.
Well, it's interesting, too, that they felt they needed to hijack the March for Your Lives.
The Women's March.
The Women's March,
Yeah.
yeah, as opposed to put on their own march.
Right.
Like, they could do
I
that.
mean, there were
They could get the
plenty of
permits
people
and
from
all
San
that.
Bernardino who were just fine, wonderful.
Yeah.
They were just this little cadre of folks
Right.
who were horrible.
So rather than organize their own type of march, they hijack others.
Yeah. They were just very, very angry. And I understand, I'm a white woman. There's only so much I can understand of other people's experiences. So I understand. To be a trans person, woman of color, I understand why they're have lots of things to complain about and be angry about and everything like that. But I feel like they were attacking their allies.
That's not.
It's like we are all here in support of them. We want them to be here. We want to include them, But
you would hope San Bernardino would give you a good representation, because I've been to a couple of their May Day things, and mostly they're union things, but they're huge. And they march through the city.
There's just a handful of folks from there. I am sure we had loads of people from San Bernardino who were just fine. It's just this little group, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 people.
Probably just a little clique.
Yes, little cliques turn up a lot of trouble.
I know. I love the March for Our Lives, because it was really the kids.
Yeah, but for that one, I am not a fan of marches. I think it's basically a step up from the online slacktivism.
Yeah.
I made a sign, I marched, and I chanted, I did something, yay, I'm an activist. Well, okay, what else did you do? So, with Democrats of Riverside, and we also had volunteers from Swing Left, and a couple people just saw it on Facebook at the March for Our Lives Facebook page, showed up to help register voters, and we registered 50, the majority of whom were pre-registrants. The 16 and 17-year-olds can pre-register. So when they turn 18, they're automatically registered. It didn't matter, political party, no political party, whichever, everyone who wanted to register got registered. And what we did is, because at the Women's March, we had a table. And we realized people didn't really come around. So we had sent out, I don't know, we had maybe at least 8 of us going around with clipboards among the crowd, registering voters that way. And also trying to get everybody to do vote by mail, because that way if they're it just shows up. They don't have to think, oh wow, I'm 18 now, I can go to the polls, it just turns up. Which almost all of them, at least the ones I registered, took that choice. Then there was also a group of young folks from Mi Familia Vota, which is, I think based in San Bernardino, who came out and also did voter registration. I didn't get their tally, but to me, that's what mattered. You chant, you wave your signs, that's all well and good, but do more. I can't expect everyone's going to volunteer with campaigns, do voter registration themselves, donate, but at least vote. So that's for me, that's the real activism.
Real activism?
Yeah, real activism is the campaigning, registering voters, whether it's making phone calls for candidates, fundraising, it's doing something practical. Writing to your legislators. one of my favorite projects, and we've had them once already at Democrats of Greater Riverside, and we're going to, maybe not every month, but bring them in on a pretty regular basis, it's a group called Postcards to Voters. Postcards to Voters. It's a national thing. And it's basically, there's always campaigns going on. Because you have special elections in different states to fill states. And it doesn't matter if it's like just a state race. It doesn't have to be national races. Because, and what it is that, you sign up to, right, you sign up, you get a list of names and addresses of voters, Democrats registered in that district, that wherever it is we're focusing on. And all you do is, hey, remember to vote. Here, this person is the Democrat running. Remember to vote on this day. And so they only get sent out to sort of a receptive audience, being that they are registered Democrats. And it's a really easy way for people. They just sit there. I mean, we have them with our club meetings. We start at 7, but people a lot of times, like 6 o'clock's like dinner or social hour. So like 6:30, people get started writing the postcards and do that for a while till the meeting starts. And it's been very positive. I know, because to me, one of the focuses should also be the different state legislators, because of the census and redistricting. So after the census results are in, and then it's up to the state legislators to handle the redistricting, so we need Democrats in there so we don't get more of these gerrymandered. I mean, they'll be gerrymandered anyway, but more favorably, more equitable than they would be otherwise.
Has some interesting districts.
Yes.
Some interesting changes, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
And it's been, and people have, the other good one, Swing Left, is another really good local group, and all these things that just sprung up after Trump.
That's interesting.
And what Swing Left focuses on is they go to districts, like a couple women from the Democrat Club are super active in it, they're both retired. And so I think just about every Sunday they go out to District 39. Forget if that's Darrell Issa. It's one of the Republicans that we want to get rid of. And so that they canvass. They just go there just about every weekend and canvass, and knocking on doors. And they're because there are, within about 45 minutes to an hour from Riverside, there are 5 districts that are considered flippable.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, Greg has a map somewhere that he made. But you can just look it up. There's like the flippable 5, and that's, so the focus is with regard to taking control of Congress on the national level, volunteers going to those areas to try to get people to vote for their candidates, get Democrats to actually get out and vote. We're not always good about that, especially young folks. Our voter turnout is not what it should be, especially on a non-presidential year. It's always tough.
One hopes with all of the high school students getting involved.
Yeah.
So many of these marches and walkouts that maybe they could be talked into continuing to vote.
I would hope
after
so.
2018 and 2020.
Yeah, well, it's just hard because it's just like with the marches. These students are all rah rah rah, but then what? Will that motivation and energy carry into elections? Will they volunteer with candidates? Will they actually get out and vote? Will they go register other voters? To me, that's always my concern. Is it's wonderful that I just love seeing the enthusiasm and motivation, but is it a movement or a moment? And do people? It's often that is sufficient. Whatever it is, their marches, rallies, walkouts are enough. They make people, like just with everything else, they make people feel like they're doing something. So, but yet it doesn't. And so a lot of the activists around here, like there's an upcoming fundraiser organized by Swing Left that will go toward, I don't know if it's like all the flippable districts or just whichever one. I think it might be just 39 they're concentrating on. They've done things, different groups of, like Sister District, I don't know how active they are anymore. They pair up with districts in, like we said, we export the volunteers, or volunteer time. So they pair up with districts in other parts of the country and then raise money and make phone calls for those candidates. And they put on, I know the women who run that, they put on like bake sales and, they do their part. But I do find you get a lot of the same people again and again. And some of the people we see again and again seem like Trump is what's galvanizing them into action, and others are people who have been around, active in politics for quite some time.
So there's an increase in I would call it progressive activism since Trump.
Oh, yes.
Much more.
Huge.
Much
We
more.
call it the Trump bounce. Oh, yes. It just became, we went from meetings where we're like, lucky we had 20 to like 50.
Wow.
It's not been, attendance lately has been going down, and we haven't figured out why. Because one of the concerns is basically burnout. It's really easy to get into too much and then burn out, and then you do nothing. So there's burnout, there's just, we get so used to the daily outrage. It's just, you don't feel like, well, whatever you're doing, like every single day there's something else horrible going on. How often can you be outraged? You can't always have that level of emotion, or at some point it's not motivating anymore because it's just there all the time.
That's tough. That's tough.
It is. Trying to keep people engaged. So I know right now with Democrats of Greater Riverside, what we're focusing on, said we're putting together a reception for Penny Newman. And then we're also doing the voter registration at Tamale Festival, most likely at the Chili Cook-Off, which is at the end of May. And then we'll be at the Juneteenth Festival in June. Not sure about July, about a couple months in there. But then the Southern California Fair is at the end of October. And that's just before the cutoff for registering for the general election. And I really wanted to have a booth there last year, but the problem is it's something like 7, 8 days, maybe 9, and we'd have to be there every single day. And there's not enough volunteers just for my club. So now I've been working with the Central Committee, the county party, and a bunch of clubs are going to it'll be under the umbrella of the county party, and then a bunch of clubs are all going to say, I'll take this day, I'll take that day. It is a Republican area.
Where?
It's in Lake Parish.
Okay.
Which is it's a little country out there, and it's the sort of thing that would appeal more to country type, it's got, I don't know if it has like rodeo or like monster trucks. Some of the stuff that they have at the fair is definitely not traditionally what progressives go to. Doesn't mean they won't.
So it's not like a day at the LA County Fair.
No. But I'm really hoping we can get it together to have the booth then.
That would be nice.
And I do think there's been a change in leadership for the much, much, much better at the county level. Where
that's interesting.
Yes, the new party chairman, Steve Ruth, he went out of his way to, he held a big meeting where it's like, everybody, Democrat, not Democrat, you just call yourself a progressive, come on in, he's focused on how can we all work together. Whether Democrat, socialist, no party preference, generic liberal, just trying to get everybody to work together, realizing we have common cause.
Nice.
Because the Democratic Party has a lot of division, of course.
It always has.
Yeah, but then you look at like the Bernie Hillary thing got so bitter,
That's such a shame.
and
That's a shame.
people are still upset, and people think, oh well, the DNC, I don't know how they choose which candidates to back, but they're thinking, oh, they're the establishment, right? There's no trust there with them, and even I think so that's why some people don't either change registration to Democrat or join the Democrats of Greater Riverside or other clubs, is because they don't want to be affiliated with Democrat. Some people, it's like I've even felt that from some other groups we've worked with, is that it took a while for them to want to work with us because there is a perception that we are the establishment. What they don't realize is the establishment works.
Hard.
Yes. It's not, traditionally it's I wish we didn't have a two-party system, but we do, so what are we going to do? Go with the best option. And there's some people who don't quite realize that
It's better than shooting at each other.
Yeah.
Or gangs of people taking up. Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Better to argue it out in public than to shoot it out.
Well, yes.
Or assassinate it out.
And that's why I do think that it's some of the marches around the large issues like that, the Women's March, that, March for Our Lives, those can bring together the entire progressive community. So it's helping build cohesion, at least on our local level. There have been people I've met through activism who are, will come to the Democrats of Greater Riverside meeting, we'll coordinate on activities, like postcards to voters. The women in that group, and it is really largely overwhelmingly women who are the activists. And you saw the sign making workshops. Who's there? Mostly women. That was the same at the March for Our Lives, even though that wasn't particularly, gendered march. But it was still primarily women who were at the workshop, and I don't know about the crowd, but I don't know because Trump is so offensive to women or some sort of natural nurturing instinct, but I feel it's really, women have taken a lot of leadership.
Women are more social.
That's true, and social connections definitely matter. Right now on our board of the Democrat Club, it's like 4 or 5? Yeah, there's 5. It's a way majority. I think we only have 2 guys on the board. Which again, did not used to be the case.
Well, that's interesting, because you really want a mixture.
Yeah.
You really need a mixture. It works better, it feels better. Well, to some people, I imagine it feels better and works better. But
well, it should. We need a diverse group. It can't just be, because if it's only one voice, that's their set of priorities.
And it's just one language. You need more than one language.
Yeah, and some of the things the Democrat Club, not progressive activists in general, but just the club, my particular club, is struggling with, is how do we get more LGBTQ, people of color, not so much the young segment, because there's a very active Riverside County Young Democrats Club. So I'm not worried about that's where most people, 30 and under go, even 35 and under, whatever. So I understand why we get the somewhat older crowd, but I would like more people 40s, 50s, and more diverse group attending and being active.
That would be a challenge to get people to leave their living rooms.
Oh, it is. And then to get them to keep coming out, and then there's also the factor of I expect burnout, in every group, because it's the same people who come out again and again and again. It's the same people, like the 2 women who were very active in Swing Left. They also were doing, they were doing voter registration at March for Our Lives. They've helped run booths at a lot of our voter registration events. They come to the meetings. They're really involved. And I always worry that, the people who volunteer are going to get burned out, because it is the same people again and again and again. Who's actually putting in the work? It's hard to bring in people who will do stuff. People like to talk, they don't like to do.
You have to get it social. Which
is always a challenge. I like giving people a particular task. You are going to do that, and then they're accountable for it. It's not someone's going to do it. I think it helps people stay more involved, because people want to help, but then they go, I don't know what to do. We heard that after Trump, the Democrat Club, we'd be like, people just coming, I don't know what to do. I can't believe this happened. How did this happen? What we need to do something. My first thought was, where the hell were you during the whole campaign? But that's okay. They're here now. We'll take them as they come. But that really was a lot of it, is people want to do something, but how do we channel their energies into something productive?
That's right. In the amount of time they can give.
Yeah.
That's hard for the organizer, I would think.
Oh, yeah. Even just me personally, I've had to work really hard to delegate. I like to do everything, and but I've had to, being better about delegating, asking the other board members to take care of things, or even trying to get non-board members more involved in especially the voter registration booth. I can't be there all day. I could, but I shouldn't. So, okay, can they take whatever shifts without having a board member present? Because once we know that people are reliable, then I'm like, we don't need a board member there, as long as we have reliable volunteers.
That's always the trick.
And we also,
that'll follow through.
Yes, and we do get a lot of people, they'll come to a couple of meetings, all rah, 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 and then we never see them again.
Happens.
So I don't know what else you want to cover. I've been rambling around for quite a while.
That's okay. Let me just ask you just a few things that are curious to me. Like, I noticed that in a lot of the other marches and the other things, not necessarily recent ones, the labor unions have provided a lot of the people who showed up. And I imagine a lot of the support and whatever. I didn't notice them in Riverside in either the last two marches, the women's group. Maybe I just didn't notice, especially this last one, March for Our Lives. I didn't think there was much union presence there. I don't know that it would have been appropriate or inappropriate, but I was just curious.
Yeah.
Is that something? Are those groups that you work with normally, or
yes,
is it just
we have
serendipity
like
when
the
it happens?
International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. I forget which number. They're on Spruce Street, their place, and they host. I've been there for phone banking for Hillary. We've been there. The Riverside County Democrat Party now holds their monthly meetings there because they outgrew the space they were in before. So they always have been very welcoming. And whether they turn people out in force or not, I don't know. They also are big contributors to Democratic candidates.
Okay.
That is a big thing. Unions definitely contribute a lot. Then I know it was the Domestic Workers Union, downtown Riverside, like I think over behind Heroes. They let the organizers for the Women's March use their space, at least for the first meeting or two. I think they also may have let the kids use the space for March for Our Lives. So the union support may not always be in numbers, but in making available places to meet. And to me, their biggest impact is probably donations to candidates because they have money.
They have numbers.
Yes.
I think you've covered just about everything. Oh, actually, are you looking more at the June 5th primary or the fall primary?
I'm taking it one step at a time. My current focus is June.
Okay.
And because we won't know, some of the races are still quite open. Yeah. And so, I mean, look at the governors. The gubernatorial candidates, nobody got the party endorsement because nobody got enough votes. And so that's still something that's fairly wide open.
That was surprising. Well, maybe it wasn't, I guess.
It really wasn't because, I mean, Newsom he's in the lead, but not even a huge lead. Like, but he's so incredibly charming and charismatic and handsome. I mean, a few months ago, Greg and I, basically a lot of the local union leaders, political activist leaders, some candidates were all invited to a meet and greet with him. And yeah, I mean, he is but it didn't have a lot of substance, but goodness, he's very charming. You know, Villaraigosa, I've heard him speak. I thought he was kind of a dick. John Chung is, I think he's a very practical, good candidate, but he doesn't have the name recognition. And for a lot of, this is where the party tears itself apart, where it's like there's this certain, almost a purity test. Person has to be XYZ positions on everything to be sufficiently progressive to get my vote, is the way these people look at it. You know, instead of the Democrats just going, here's the party, here's the candidate, vote for the candidate. They're like, well, if I don't like the person, well, who are you going to like? I mean, especially some of the ideas out there, in my view, we're not there yet. We don't have a way to pay for single payer health care. Like community colleges, I do believe they should be free, but even then it should be means tested. I mean, if someone's parents, they make $200,000 a year, why should the kid go to college for free? That's not, there needs to be something in place where to make education as free or low cost as possible without free riders. You know, because people who can pay should. So some of these ideas that they're hashing out are universal free education. I'm like, where are you going to get the money for that one? Right? Yet some people still can and should pay. So you do get this tug of war with some of the progressives who are pretty far left. They have these ideas that are lovely ideas, but they don't realize we're not there yet. We don't have a way to practically implement them. And if someone is 100% supporting those ideas, then they're not going to get behind that candidate.
So do you think that'll be
which is sort of self-defeating.
Do you think that'll be a problem in June when these elections are supposedly?
I think there'll be a much bigger problem in November,
Okay.
and that's going to be a nationwide problem. because it's not just around here, it's everywhere. The reason why I'm particularly focusing on June is because of there's a few candidates that we need to get them past the post, like Penny Newman. You know, it's because I said our local Takano's going to get it again. He's been in there. He's like, I think it's his third term. Maybe no, he's in his. He was first elected in 14, and then he was in 16. So he's up. This is up for re-election for the third time. He's very well loved. So to me, it's more getting our local races. Like I want to see Penny make it past whatever that threshold is to get on the November ballot. Another guy, you probably met Hakan.
Who?
Hakan?
Hakan?
Hakan Jackson?
The name rings a bell.
You probably met him. But anyway, he's running for Riverside treasurer or tax assessor. She looked up, and the guy who's been in there has been unopposed for ages. No one ever run against him. So he's like, sure. You know? And like he's got an MBA in business from, you know, and all this, and pretty good experience. So these are the sort of things I want to work on the local stuff for June. I focus much more is local. You know what I mean? Because some of their, at least are, like I said, our congressman's safe. And with regard to the districts that are considered the flippable districts, until we know which candidate is going to be advancing toward November, or which two top Democrats, whatever the case may be, I don't know that, you know, in terms of putting a whole lot of resources into a candidate, I don't think it's the best use of resources in those areas yet. Like up to June, it should be more about registration, get out the vote, but that's a con.
I think I've seen him.
Yeah, you've probably run into him at some of our parties.
Probably. I wouldn't say that I know him well.
You've met him, I'm sure. You've seen him around. We have a pretty wide social circle. I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
So
it's okay.
You're optimistic about that flippable 5? Or
Not guarded.
guarded?
Because the concern is there was actually a push for some candidates to drop out. Because there was the state party convention, and those who made it got enough votes to be endorsed by the party, and that occurred before the filing date. And there was a lot of 42, Congressional District 42. Ken Calvert, they've been trying to get him out for years. He's useless. He takes a bunch of money from the NRA. He won't ever hold town halls or meet with anybody. All he likes to go do is to go commission in, and his buddy over there will throw him a fundraiser of $500 a plate. But there are two candidates, one who got the party endorsement and the other one who did not, but he's got his own very deep pockets, so he won't leave the race. He's a horrible, horrible candidate, not a good person either.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Yeah. Oh, televangelist. Had his own little radio station, and he kept talking about, he has all the support of the churches. I'm like, dude, church and state, no, you can't. He didn't get it, and because he didn't speak at one of our meetings, he had, like, I understand, I'm a public defender. Like, he had an accusation his ex-wife made about domestic violence. That would have been fine, but a woman in a whole separate state years later made a similar accusation.
Okay.
So I'm like, 2 times is not. You know, and it's just his. No, really, most people don't like him. But he's got money.
And he can finance
himself. Yes, and that's, I mean, not likely anyone can get Calvert out, but that's an example. Just that kind of division makes it basically impossible. It took any chance of a shot at the hell. And we do still have similar divisions in some of the flippable 5. There's some candidates who wouldn't let up. I mean, I understand they have their ambitions and everything, but why are you putting all your money into something where the odds are very low and they're not seeing the greater good? They're seeing their personal ambition instead of what is best for the area. I mean, if someone said it would be very best for the Democratic Greater Riverside if I weren't president, cool, okay. Like, what is good for our area? Getting in Democratic candidates. How do we do that? Whatever the best way to do it, we're going to do it. So that's why I'm not super confident about November. And that could happen. We could have nuclear war.
Don't say that.
So, I mean, there is just a lot that could happen between now and then. And I am hoping that there are some candidates who, even if their names are still on the ballot, will not be as active in campaigning. Because they also just don't have, I mean, there's only so much money to go around. in terms of people that they like to donate and who they want to support, and these are that are less popular. Like I don't have any numbers, but I have a very strong suspicion that Quintero, the candidate with the money bags, that I don't think he gets a lot of, he doesn't do a lot of fundraising. I don't think he gets a lot of donations. He just has his own money. He wants to buy himself a seat in Congress. He's one. I mean, he's going to too. He was told by in Florida to stop practicing law without a license. He holds himself out as a doctor, but in fact has not finished whatever licensing program to actually get his clinician's license for, it's like a family therapist type thing. Yeah. And the worst part that really takes me off, and I know I'm going off topic, but when he came to our meeting, he brought his son who has special needs. I was like making an example out of him. Oh, my special needs boy, when he's talking about education. And I said, don't do that. That's offensive. Your child's not a prop. Like, it'd be one thing if you couldn't get a babysitter and had to bring them, but you don't use your child like that. And he was extremely poorly received.
Well,
No surprise there.
I guess that's one of the. I guess the political parties. This is just off topic.
Yeah.
I guess the political parties are not the political parties of yore, where the party leaders could meet in the back room, that smoke room, and decide who's going to run and who's not. I guess that just does not.
That does not happen. And then the other concern, it's wonderful to see so many people, especially women, running for races, but these people, a lot of them have zero political experience. And so they're not running the most effective campaigns. And it's not just women. I mean, my boss at the public defender's office, actually, he did not ultimately file but for a while there he was trying to run for district attorney somewhere now. And he has no political experience. And it kind of showed. He was not very politically astute. So you have very well-intentioned candidates, but they don't know what they're doing. Which then I think that is ultimately harmful. But there are groups out there who put on training, candidate trainings.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, I can't think of any of the names off the top of my head, but there are groups that put on training for people who want to run for office. Some of them are just women-focused. I know I got some invitations, the one I'm like, I'm not running for office, thanks. I'm behind the scenes, woman.
But you might want to see what they're doing. Because you're in charge of everything.
Like, here's what you do. Well, the good thing with our board members and even some of the general members of the club, some of them have been involved for ages and ages. I mean, we have people in their 70s who've probably been doing politics for 40 or 50 years.
Whoa.
So having that experience has been very good in terms of us newer folks learning how things are done.
So you do have a lot of historical memory among your members.
We still do, yes. Which that is another concern with some of the new clubs. Like there's the, they're going to come to regret their name one day or just give up on it. There's the Feel the Burn, B-E-R-N, Democrats. And there are multiple chapters that sprung up of the Feel the Burn Democrats. I know there's one in the desert. I know it's like a nationwide kind of movement, the Feel the Burn Democrats, which is their own charter section of the state Democratic Party. But that's, again, I think one of those that has the possibility of splitting the party when you have these folks who they're still, like just the name itself indicates they're kind of hung up on the Bernie-Hillary divide. And they're still perhaps chasing unattainable dreams and expecting their candidates to do the same. I think our party tends to miss it. They don't necessarily, they're not very realistic sometimes, or pragmatic. I mean, there's a saying, Republicans fall in line and Democrats fall in love. Republicans, they'll march as they're built to march, and Democrats better like the candidate. But I'm like, we got to do more marching. Of like, just vote for the, whoever's there. So I'm hopeful, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. But I do think, the more Trump screws up, the more things on the national stage are likely to change. Though it's also, for me, that's Californian, the local races have a much bigger impact on my life.
I'm sorry?
The local races have a much bigger impact on my life. Just realistically, do I have a city council person I can call and will actually respond to me? He's a Republican, but he's a moderate one, and he does respond very quickly.
But I mean, do we have people in who are making the right decisions? Just think about, I mean, taxes and things like closing the museum. You know, they're making some poor choices there. There's been a big dispute lately between the mayor's office and the city council over the city manager getting a big old pay raise. So just some of the local stuff, I think, has more impact. Because California's safe.
Right.
It is.
Right.
We have the luxury of not having to worry about a lot of things the rest of the country has to worry about.